Okay, so this is where we're at now with 5 layers, 4 of which are paint layers, and we're gonna go ahead and add the next layer. Kind of wanted to zoom you out so you can see where we're at now. Let me spin this slowly so you can see. But let's go ahead and zoom in and start on the next layer. So the first thing I think I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna put down kind of where we're gonna have a little bit of the orange base of the fish. So I'm just gonna grab some orange paint here. And mark out where we're gonna have this layer be. We are gonna start moving away from the face and more into just the body, since we're coming up higher and higher each time. But what I'm thinking is, let me move this just a little bit. What I'm thinking is we're gonna have it be, oh, this paint's drying quick today. We're gonna have it be this area right in here. Now after I plop this paint down, I immediately want to soften these edges. Make sure that we don't have any, let me grab some water here, any harsh edges. And again, every single time that we're potting down a base, just like this, we're doing that because it's very hard to paint on a crystal clear surface like resin. It's way too smooth. So when we're doing this, oops, I came way too far on this side, didn't I? Oh yeah. When we're doing this, we're creating a base for that paint to stick to. It's a lot easier to paint when it's like this. Let me spin it, make sure it's looking good from all angles. Something you have to do every single time you're painting a fish like this or anything 3D on resin is you always have to turn the painting around. Alright, we're gonna let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna grab a little corner here and just erase right at the front of my face here. Again, the way you erase is just using water. Very, very easy. Cool. Now that we have that done, I'm gonna go ahead and start adding the bodies of my baby fish for this layer. So I'm gonna grab some gold to add to my orange here. There we go. Oops, that's a lot of paint. All right. All right, now I've got good paint here. Let's go ahead and pop some baby fish on here. Let's see. Make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. Pop this down so we can focus on it. There we go. All right, so I think on this layer, I'm looking and seeing where I haven't placed a fish in a few layers, because we are gonna start wanting the fish to be much like this area right here where you can completely tell the fish are on different depths, which is very, very cool. We want to start placing fish that haven't been painted in a specific area for a while, so we get that depth. For example, in this area right here, there are no surfaced fish. As in, there's no fish in this area that are high up to the surface. So if I were to paint a fish here, it would be obviously more three-dimensional. So that's what we're gonna do. I think I'm gonna add probably a fish right on here. I'm thinking this is gonna be, yeah, absolutely. This is gonna be slightly over fish. If you turn it, you see how that's doing such a cool 3D effect doing that? See how it covers that fish a little bit too, turning it that way? So that's a good spot to put this fish. As we're getting higher and higher, it's okay to start having them on top of each other a little bit, because again, they are on different layers, so it creates a cool 3D effect. So I'm just gonna paint my baby fish here. You want to make them about that big, just like that. And again, because we are higher and higher up to the surface, we are going to start focusing more on detail, just like that. All right, while I wait for that baby fish to dry, let's add a few more. I'm thinking I'm not going to be so careful about the placement of my other ones. I'm thinking I'm going to put one, let's see. I'm thinking I'm going to put one here. I think one actually really needs to go here. So we're going to place a baby fish right there. Actually, you guys can't see that. Place the baby fish right here. See how it's completely covering this fish? But if you turn it, it's actually miles away. Did you see that? You see how cool that is? Look how far away that fish is. And as we turn it, now it's on top. Isn't that just the coolest thing? That is, again, why this art medium is very cool, is just the optical illusion of it being a very three-dimensional thing. I mean, technically it could be a three-dimensional thing, but these layers are all two-dimensional. So it is more like an optical illusion rather than actually creating, because it wouldn't be an optical illusion if we placed 3D sculptures in here, right? The only reason it's a 3D optical illusion is because we're actually painting what appears to be something that it's not, if that makes sense. So that's the reason I really like this art style that's come. And thankfully, resin has become a very popular art medium as of recently. And I think that that's very, very cool. I'm very happy about that because, well, my friends always post or find these resin videos and they're always tagging me in them. It makes me feel very, very special, even though I'm not exactly a professional when it comes to resin or anything like that. Right now I'm just thickening up the paint because these are a little bit translucent right now. Alright, let's add a few more. Actually, I'm going to add the tail to this guy right here. Just an impression of a tail. And some, I forget what they're called, fins. Alright, and let's add fish. I'm thinking we're going to add a fish. Don't want to put one there. How about, how about, I don't want it to be too crowded, but I definitely want more fish. How about we put a fish? I want one more. How about just one more? How about we put a fish? Oof, this is getting dramatic, trying to find places for these fish. How about we put a fish right here? A small one. Just right there. I have a little cluster right over here. All four of these fish are on different layers, which makes it very, very cool to look at from all these different angles. Just like that. That's very, very nice. And is that it? Is that all the fish we're gonna do? Yeah, I think that's all the fish I'm gonna do. My body tells me to do more, but my mind's telling me to stop. Let's go ahead and focus on our big fish now. So let me move this over here so we can focus on that. And let me physically actually focus my camera here. There we go. All right, I'm grabbing just some silver and some white paint for the scales that are white on this one. All right, cool. I'm just mixing up a little bit of more pearlescent paint for the white scales. I think the white scales are my favorite part of this fish here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna focus on, again, we're bringing things in. We're not gonna be painting out to here because again, we're trying to get that 3D effect. We're gonna do one dot just on the tail there, no more than that. And we're going to start bringing those guys in right there. And then we're gonna bring these in as well. Just like that. So we can see where our white scales are. I'm just wetting my paintbrush a little bit and softening these. There we go. I'm gonna make them a little bit more defined in a second once that water dries. All right, let's go ahead and add orange for the orange scales here. All right, we're gonna just dot where we want the orange ones to be. And this is also gonna help us see where we're gonna be painting this layer. I want the dots in the head to be a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, you can see we're working in such a small area, and it's gonna be small for the next few layers as we're working up and up and up. And I'm wondering if I will add a dorsal fin. I'm not sure yet. I know every single time I make one of these videos, I get like a million comments saying, add a dorsal fin, add a dorsal fin. And I don't know yet. I think I will. I might not. Not a lot of other resin fish artists draw the or paint the dorsal fins. So I wonder if it's just because it's from like a technical aspect, it's very difficult, or it ruins the effect, or what it does. So I'm a bit concerned because I don't have a lot of, how should I say, references or examples of dorsal fins to go off of from other artists that do this. So I am concerned. I don't know if I'll do it. I'm still thinking about it. Right now I'm just grabbing some water and I'm softening up the edges of the fish. Oops, that's too much water. So I'm just drying off my brush and moving that water around. There we go. Moving that around, move it around, move it around. Just like that. All right, I'm gonna let that dry for a bit before we start doing a little bit more detailing. While that's drying, let's go ahead and work on our baby fish a little bit. Make sure that they're looking phenomenal. So I'm gonna just make sure that there's no holes, because it's very easy when you're painting on such a glassy surface to get holes. Just like that. Alright, and there's my other fish right here. I'm gonna make sure you guys can see him too. Make sure there's no holes. And where's our last one? Our last one is right here. Just like that. Alright, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of gold on top, not a lot, because you know me, I'll say it every single part, I like the glitz and glam of cute, cute golden fish. So we're gonna make our fish sparkle just a little bit. All right, and where's our last fish? I keep forgetting where my fish are when I'm doing these. I can't find them once I paint them. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now I am gonna try to see if I'm gonna add a 3D layer to any of my last fish that I painted in the last layer. I don't know if I will. Let's see, I'm just looking around now. I'm thinking not. I'm not thinking we're gonna do that for this layer. I'm thinking these are looking fine. They're not exactly 100% 3D, but they're looking okay. I might, let's see, is that one on last layer? Sometimes I have to put my paintbrush down just to see how far down some of these fish are, so I can see if they were from my last layer or if they were from a million layers ago. And I just found out I've got a hair. Do you guys see that? There's a black hair in it. Oh, that's terrible. Tragic, tragic. Alright, I think I'll just add a slightly transparent layer on top of some of these. Let's see if this works out. And this is just done by adding very watery paint. And I'm moving around making sure that that looks okay. Again, I'm moving around making sure it looks okay. I think those are the only two I'll do that to. Yeah, that'll be good. Alright, let's come back to our big fish here. And we're gonna go ahead and add a little bit of a shadow. Let's see, a shadow to some of our white, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of silver behind some of my white scales to help create that illusion of a little bit of shading and depth, not a lot. Alright, and now that I have that down, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some copper to do the same for the orange fins. Alright, I've got a little bit of copper on my paintbrush here, so I'm just gonna create... Ooh, that's actually a lot more copper than I expected. Do you see how copper that is? So I'm just gonna create a little bit of an impression of shadowing. And then as I get to the front, I'm gonna make the dots a lot smaller, because that's kind of what they look like in pictures, is they're a lot... The scales near the face are a lot smaller. There we go. I'm gonna grab a little bit of water and soften up near the face just a little bit. Bring those back down a touch, just like that. Yeah, that's looking good. That's how I want my fish to look like. I'm gonna grab a little bit of a bright orange with some gold. And I'm gonna use this to dot out some definite scales in the orange, because I think we're losing our definition here. See how I'm losing my definition a little bit? Okay. So I'm just gonna work on this fish until it's a little bit more defined, because right now you can't really see any definition. I'm gonna grab some white to mark out our white scales. I think the white adds the most definition. I'm very glad that I added white to this fish. I think it's looking a lot better with the white. Just like that. And every time that we work on a fish, we want to again turn it. Make sure that it is blending together any which way that we are turning it. You see that? 3D effect is happening now just a little bit. I'm going to soften some of these edges with just a little bit of water. Just like that. When you put the water down, you can actually kind of see if you are struggling to see through the film that's caused by the paint on the surface. If you put the water down, you're actually going to see a little bit what's going to be there when you put the resin down, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain because the film doesn't really pick up this this effect of the film, where there is like a cloudy film due to the paint on top of the surface. But once you're actually working, I promise you, you'll know what I'm talking about here. What I'm doing right now is I'm just mixing up a dark orangey, silvery, grayish color here for the eyes of the baby fish. And if you're wondering why we haven't done the eyes of the... Is that looking good? Right there. Is that looking good on camera? No. I definitely need to add more darkness to it. If you're wondering why we haven't done the fish on the big fish's eyes, it's because we are above the layer in which those eyes are going to be, so those eyes are completely done. We're not going to be working on them anymore because we've passed that layer. So every time that you cast, you can't exactly go back and fix a layer that you've cast already. So it is very important that you are happy with a layer before you cast it in resin, because otherwise you're stuck with it. You're stuck with that layer. Like this last layer, I got a black hair stuck in this last layer, and there's no way for me to fix that. That hair is in there forever. And if I do an incorrect brushstroke as well, that'll be there forever as well. Alright, now that I've added eyes to my baby fish here, I am going to clean up some of the edges on my fish, unless that's just film that I'm seeing there. Might be film. It's probably film. Alright, and I'm liking how that's looking now. Now that this is drying down a little bit, I do want to just... I so want it to be a little bit more defined. What I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to grab some darker orange here. And I'm really just going to create a background for my orange scales. Just like that. Make it more solid. Because I want this to be more defined, solid, rather than blotchy, which is what I'm feeling a little bit right now. So now that I have that thick layer down a little bit, I'm just going to soften up the edges. Even though I want it defined, the edges need to be soft. We need that seamless blend between layers. Alright, so that's done. We're going to wait for this layer to dry before we go ahead and paint some orange scales on top of that. Okay. Actually, I don't know. Let's see. What am I going to do with this layer? You know what, you guys? I'm going to show you how to erase because I'm feeling dissatisfied with this layer. So I'm going to erase her just a smidgen. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing water on top of a cloth here, and we're going to go ahead and remove our last layer. Alright, you see that? That was an example of how you erase on resin. It's actually extremely easy. It's probably one of the easiest art forms to erase on. So I'm just drying off now. And now we can restart this layer. When you're doing this for the first time, you're probably going to do that a lot, honestly. I know I've had to do it quite a bit. It is very, very normal. Because it is very hard to get used to doing this. And I know I'm not quite used to doing it myself. So let's just add our painting layer again. Just like that. And that's a bit thick, so I'm going to clean my brush and remove some paint here. But you can erase almost as many times as you want on these. You have to make sure that your last layer is so completely cured. At least 24 hours is what I wait for my particular resin brand to cure. You might want to wait longer. If you're using one of those fancy ones that cure with blacklight, obviously that means you can work a lot quicker. But I have never worked with those. They seem pretty expensive, so I'm not too bothered by them. But if you have one, you can work on it a bit quicker. For these ones, 24 hours between each layer, which means that if your painting is 10 layers, it will take at least 10 days to do. Not that it matters how long or quick you work, because you still have to wait those 24 hours and paint just once a day. Okay, I'm liking that a lot more. This is going to be a nice smooth base for my paint to go onto, and I feel like it's going to be a lot easier for me to paint on it like this. There's a dog at the door. I'm going to add a little bit of impression of where my white scales are going to be. You see that? I have to come out just a little bit. You see how it's not quite connected? So I'm going to come out a little bit. Did that connect it? Oh, a little bit. I'm going to just add. Oof. That might have been too far. So if I turn him this way, no, it's not too far at all, but it's getting close. No, it is a little bit too far. I'm gonna soften those last two dots that I just did. Again, we're gonna add a little bit of paint, and we're just gonna move, or I'm sorry, water. We're gonna move this paint using the water. And erase. There we go. Alright, that's looking pretty good, isn't it? Let me turn it back around so you can see it this angle. A little bit more connected, slightly disconnected, but it's okay. Let me soften, soften, soften. Just like that. Soften, 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 soften. We still want it there to be obvious scales, but we want them to be soft near the edges, just like that. Alright, let me add my scales on the other side here. A little bit more paint so I can glob it down a little bit, like that. Just like that. That's looking pretty good. And then we're gonna grab a couple on the tail, not a lot. Not a lot on the tail. Let's come in just a little bit, just so we can mark out, and let's add the ones on this edge as well. Cool. I'm liking this a lot more already. I hope you are as well. If you liked the last layer more, go ahead and leave a like and comment in the description below. I'm teasing, of course. Again, we're softening right now because the edges still need to be soft. Just like this. And I'm working with a lot of wet, like water on the tail, because it's going to make it a little bit more transparent. The more watery the solution is, the more transparent it is when you, how should I say, add the resin. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add orange and gold to add my scales, and I really want these scales to be a little bit more defined and popping. So I'm mixing this gold to really amp up my color here. And let's see if this is gonna be good. A little bit more gold. Yes, that's a little bit better. It's a little hard to tell on camera, obviously, because we're working with color here that is only a little bit different. I'm gonna be a little bit more precise where I'm placing these colors because I don't want to erase again. And we're gonna come up the side here. Let me grab some more paint to make it more defined. And come up the side here. Again, right near the head, we're gonna make the scales slightly smaller than the ones towards the back. So I'm liking this a lot more, like ridiculously more. Again, I'm having a slightly wet, clean brush to soften up the edges. Let me soften some of these a little bit more. Soften, 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 soften. There we go. And turn this around. And let's soften on this side as well. Every time that we add a new layer, it sometimes casts a shadow on the layer behind it, which actually makes your lower layers seem way darker than you remember. But that's totally fine. It just, again, creates a little bit more of that 3D effect. But we don't want it to be a very harsh shadow on the sides, so that, again, is helped when you soften your edges. When you soften your edges, the shadow cast on the lower layer is a lot softer. Alright, and I'm gonna add some water on the tail because I've got a film here and I just want to see what's gonna look like. There we go. There we go, that's looking a lot better. Soften, 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 soften. Woof, I'm liking this a lot more. I'm gonna add some silver to put just behind some of my scales here. There we go, just like that. And let me just grab some white to just make that silver like more of a line rather than a dot. Cool. I'm liking this. And soften, soften, soften. Every single time you do anything, soften, soften, soften. A little bit too much water here. Let me just soak that up. And blend that out. Cool. I think that's looking almost ready for casting. I feel like I need to soften the edges just a tad more. So I'm just adding water around the edges. Oof! I might have just blown that out right there, if you saw that. And let's just continue to work around. Alright, while we wait for that to dry, let's add slight details to our last layers of baby fish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some orange and gold, and I'm just going to add a little definition on the sides of some of our baby fish. I've been wanting to do this for the last couple layers, so I'm going to add a little bit on top of the eyeballs to make it appear as though they have eyelids. And then I want to go ahead and dot on the sides of the baby fish here to create a little bit of an implied texture of scales. I do the same on this one right here. Just like that. And this one right here. Just like that. There we go. And we're missing one right here. Add some eyelids to this guy. And some texture on the side. of a little bit of a goldy paint, just like that. There we go. He's looking a little bit more special. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I'm waiting for this to dry because I want to make sure it's looking good before we decide to cast it. Because again, once you cast it, you can't go back. So let's go ahead and wait for that to dry. Off camera, just until it's dried, and now I can say I'm happy with the outcome of this layer. I am gonna add a little bit of highlight to some of my fish, not a lot. The thing is about adding some highlights in the shadows is these are 3D optical illusions, so if you paint a highlight, you don't really want it to be obvious, because if you turn the fish and the highlight like goes away and moves away from the light source that you naturally have in your home or wherever this fish will be, it'll ruin the optical illusion effect. So you don't really want to go too haywire on highlights. But that is kind of where we're at now. I think what I'm going to do now is zoom you out a little bit, and we're going to cast this one in resin. So let's go ahead and zoom you out. Okay, let's go ahead and mix our resin here. So we're gonna do it just like last time, 1 capful of both hardener and resin here. There's 1 capful of resin. There we go. Again, I'll say this every single time, I do recommend you mix with a measuring cup, one of those plastic, it's almost like the ones that you take medicine out of. Those are phenomenal for use with resin, and do not use a reusable cup unless you do find a way around the fact that rinsing resin down drains is very harmful for your pipes and the environment. So I wouldn't recommend it. So let's go ahead and mix this guy. And now that I can use a heat gun, this is going to be a lot easier to mix because I can be a little bit rougher and a little bit quicker. So we're going to mix this again until the solution goes clear, which it already sort of is. If you don't have a heat gun, do what I always do and mix it slowly so it's clear and not full of bubbles. If you do have a heat gun, I think you can be a little bit more rough with your solution. Make sure you get into every groove. Wipe off the sides of your brush, or I'm sorry, your popsicle stick or whatever you're mixing with. Wipe off the sides so you're grabbing all that solution and mixing it really, really well. And once the solution has gone clear, we know it's good to pour. Yeah, it's looking pretty clear. The one thing about mixing roughly is you can no longer, making sure there's no bubbles or hairs. It's a little bit harder to see when it's clear and ready to pour. You can always just time yourself because all of them say, you know, mix for however many minutes until it's done. Personally, I always go by the rule of once it goes clear, it's ready to go. Once it goes clear, you know that the two parts are mixed properly so it can be poured. It's not so much a time sensitive thing. You don't want to be mixing it so long that you need to pour it, it starts to get tacky, but honestly you'd be mixing it for 30-40 minutes or an hour for it to start to get sticky, you know? So it's not like you have to work very fast with resin. Alright, now that I have that done, let me just get my heat gun heated up here. While that's heating up, let me move my resin to cover the whole thing. You want to make sure that your paint is dry, because if you are moving it around like this, you do risk the paint moving around with it as well, which is no good at all. Alright, there you go. And these layers are very close together right now because we are nearing the top, so we do want to be a little bit more close together, careful, and detailed. Almost finished. One spot left. There it goes. And let's hit this with a bit of heat. Get a little bit closer. It's amazing how quickly this thing works. It's ridiculous. You just see the bubbles popping on it. I have it on very, very low because I'm still not used to using something like this. Just like that. I know some people have told me just use a blow dryer. I don't trust doing that at all. I'm too afraid. You know, this painting is taking days. I wouldn't want to mess it up for just trying to rid some bubbles that are easy to get rid of in other methods. Alright, that's looking pretty gosh darn crystal clear, isn't it? Alright, let me turn this off. There we go. And we are, let me see if I can focus. It might not focus because I don't have the ability to put like a paper towel in here to make it focus. Not focused. There is our next layer. Alright, you guys, I'll go ahead and see you tomorrow for the layer after this one. We're starting to get that cool 3D effect, as you can see. Very nice. Alright, see you guys soon.